Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. And we started Charter Moms Chats a few months ago as a way to connect with our audience, even though we couldn't have in-person events or school fairs. And we've been trying to provide families with the information they need to navigate distance learning and researching what schools they want to enroll their kids in, and just talking about education news in San Antonio. And I'm so excited today. We have Tom Torkelson, who's the CEO of Choose to Succeed. But you might also be familiar with him as the co-founder of Idea Public Schools, which is one of the fastest growing, highest performing charter school networks in the country that started in the Rio Grande Valley back in 2000 and now has like dozens of campuses. It keeps growing in the San Antonio area. So, but now Tom, since July, has been CEO of Choose to Succeed. And now I should mention that Choose to Succeed is a financial supporter of the San Antonio Charter Moms nonprofit. It has been since 2017. So we're very grateful for their support that allows us to reach a bigger audience of families in San Antonio. So we asked Tom to come and talk about the growth plans that Choose to Succeed has done since 2012, what they have on the drawing board, talk about their portfolio of schools, and just the range and variety of schools that they're offering. So Tom, thank you for being part of Charter Moms Chats.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to jump in. I think there are thousands of families in San Antonio who have kids at Choose to Succeed portfolio schools, but maybe have never heard the name Choose to Succeed. So for those families, how would you describe the mission of Choose to Succeed?
Well, we're very happy to have our name not known. I mean, the real stars in the education sector in San Antonio are the schools, the school leaders, the teachers, the charter organizations. And what Choose to Succeed does is we help find very high quality charter schools and charter school networks from around the country, from around Texas, and we try to persuade them to open schools in San Antonio. We take great smaller schools in San Antonio that might have a single campus or maybe even a half campus. Maybe they've only got several of the grade levels that they're trying to grow, but they're doing a really nice job. And we figure out how to get them the philanthropy and some of the technical assistance so they can turn their small school into a big one, or their big school into a network, or their network into, hopefully something that spreads all over Texas. So that's how Idea came to San Antonio. It's because we were recruited by Victoria Rico and Will Hart, and really the driving forces behind Choose to Succeed are the Brackenridge Foundation and the Ewing Hossel Foundation, and now the Spencer Foundation. So I don't know, that wasn't a very pithy answer, but we love great charter schools. We want to see more of them. That's what we're about.
Yeah. I think as I was researching, so I want to mention for anyone looking at the video, there's a link in the description to a blog post. So if you want links to click on and to visit the Choose to Succeed website, things like that. So that's the in the description of the video, click on the blog post and follow those resources. So but as I was researching and updating that blog post, I was really struck by the set of partner schools that Choose to Succeed started with, right, which was Idea, Great Hearts, Basis, and KIP, right? And then there's a set that y'all have added. And then I was also thinking back about the event at the beginning of the month, that socially distanced outdoor event where it was a gathering of some of the schools that are in this fellowship or incubation process, right? There's charter schools that just got their approval over the summer from the State Board of Education, and there's some that are in the planning process now and they're working on their applications. So I was wondering, looking back at the past 8 years, what do you want to highlight some of the wins that the partner schools have accomplished?
Well, I mean, we couldn't be more proud of the schools that are in the Choose to Succeed portfolio. Obviously, the organization that I founded, that I was CEO of for 20 years, we've been sending kids to college for 14 years. And for 14 years, 100% of the students have applied to college. They've all gotten into college. And with the exception of 1 year, they've all stepped foot on a college campus for the first day of their freshman year. And that matters because when kids don't take any time off between the last day of their senior year and the first day of their freshman year of college, their graduation rates literally are twice as high than kids who take a gap. Because most kids aren't taking a gap year to go tour Europe or learn Italian in Florence. I mean, there's other things that are doing, that end up holding them back. So, but IDEA is just one of the many of the schools. Basis, I mean, gosh, every year they're topping everybody's list. U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, the J. Matthews poll of the top performing schools in America. And I was just at one of their campuses last week, and I challenge anybody to find an elite public or private university that is pushing their kids harder than the high school kids are being pushed at Basis. And I love Great Hearts. They have that classical education based on great books and great philosophers, which, it's a real niche. And there are families who want that. And you can't find that in the traditional government-run district schools, but you can find that in public charter schools. There's some, and KIPP, I mean, KIPP is kind of the granddaddy of them all, the first well-known charter name, in the United States. And they've been in San Antonio now for, quite some time, I think 15 years. And you mentioned that there are some wonderful new schools that have just begun. The Gathering Place is exceptional. If you've not had a program with Ryan and Joanna, you should. I think your audience will love them. They're quite good.
They've been busy. We keep trying to get them to come, but we get a lot of requests.
Very hard to book. I mean, they are like 110% about their students and their teachers, and they kind of let you know it. So you really do feel like you're bugging them, with any request for their time. I wouldn't have it in any other way. That's where you want their priority to be. SA Prep just opened. A wonderful school leader who was featured in the local news a couple of weeks ago. Stephanie Hall Powell's doing a great job. And Bika opened up her exceptional Promessa Academy. Like everybody, she opened in August, but then they welcomed kids on campus a week or two ago.
We did have Ambika on the show. She made some math activities, and it was part of over the summer we were offering at-home learning that families could do. And she wrote these really fun math activities, and she just has this infectious enthusiasm about math and the beauty of math in nature and how it feels to discover these concepts and see. Yeah.
I mean, she's an exceptional leader. And to me, this is part of what's great about charters is we're able to find these really remarkable leaders who are non-traditional, who don't go up through the typical ranks. They're not chosen via political process. They're not principal because, everybody liked them the most. I mean, they have ambitious, big, bold visions for where they want to take their schools. And that makes them edgy sometimes. And it makes them kind of a pain in the neck. Like any great entrepreneur, they have a point of view and they're passionate about it. And that's what I see with the leaders who are running all of the schools that we support.
Yeah, they all have something unique that they're wanting to offer. And I know you've mentioned back at the event in October that if you hear from the San Antonio community that families are clamoring for an education model that doesn't exist in San Antonio, that you will go anywhere in the country and try to find a successful operator with that model and try to talk them into coming to San Antonio. And that's part of what she does.
And the other thing that we're trying to do, I mean, there are wonderful educators who are trapped in the education bureaucracy right now. And they have an idea, they have a vision, and with the right sort of support, I'm kind of I feel like I'm the guy who's got to go out and find the next Beatles or the next U2 or the next Britney Spears or the next, I don't know any of the current bands. I'm kind of hating myself.
Eilish, right? No.
Yeah, thank you, Billy. Yes, exactly.
I have a 10-year-old. Yeah.
Green hair, right? Yes, she's the one with green hair. So it's kind of my.
And she was homeschooled.
And she was homeschooled, and it's my job, with hopefully the help of your audience, to find those people and quote unquote discover them so that they can reach a much wider audience of students and families.
Could be the A&R guy of charter schools.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if you could kind of cast a vision for, the numbers are, there's tens of thousands of students at Choose to Succeed partner schools now, growing from maybe a few hundred in the first year. And So like, what is the vision of where you want it to be, like maybe 10 years from now? Like what share of the education landscape in San Antonio?
Well, I mean, we are in a world where everything is increasingly personalized and individualized and bespoke just for you. I mean, people are now getting medicine that is just for them, that is based on immunotherapy and based on their DNA sequence. You are able to listen to music or watch TV shows that are just for you. You're able to be on a fitness plan or a diet that works for you specifically. And yet, education has stubbornly remained one size fits all. So, where I think charters come in is we help each family, each child, especially if they're older children. I mean, let's be realistic. When they're kindergartners or first graders, we're helping moms and dads, and that's why you're the charter mom lady. We're helping parents find the best school that fits their vision they have for their children. And as kids become middle schoolers and high schoolers, and they have more of an idea of where they want to take themselves, we want to make sure that we have a school that helps them, really pursue their fullest life, the most amount of liberty possible, and the absolute most happiness. And when I say happiness, I don't mean happiness in kind of a frivolous, silly way. Think of happiness the way that Thomas Jefferson wrote about it in the Declaration of Independence. This idea that when you are truly happy, you are self-fulfilled and you are doing what your creator put you on this planet to do. I mean, that's the sort of fulfillment that we want to help all parents and all children be able to find. And, it's not fair to put all of that on the school district. Why should one school district or one school that happens to zone you, why should they have to be responsible for all that innovation, all the individualization, all the personalization? To me, this is why more charter schools, both the number of schools and the types of schools, why I think that's really going to make San Antonio the #1 city in America to be a public school student. That's the vision that I have for San Antonio. Let's make this America's education city, and we can do it.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and I agree that the personalization is really key to that. I mean, that's like my experience with my own son was that we live in a neighborhood with good schools, and they're able to serve most kids. They can serve the typical kids very well. My son is not a typical kid, and we really needed something different. And I did not need any like shame or judgment about the fact that we chose a charter school instead of our neighborhood public school, because I'm a mom and I'm gonna fight for my kid. I'm gonna make sure that he has a life full of choices, and that he's around teachers who have high expectations for him, who don't see a label like special education and then discount what he can do. And so that's like, I mean, but part of my motivation was I knew how hard it was for me to research schools. I felt like there were not enough good options. Now there are more good options out there, thanks to Succeed. But then it's tricky for families to find out, like, what is unique about each school's model. How do they choose which school versus another? How do they navigate the application process? And so we try to make that easier for them, and try to support the schools as they're trying to, like for a school founder, it's nerve-wracking if they've got seats to fill and they need to get a hold of parents. And so we can be the connector there. That's why I feel like, yeah, so I guess I'm injecting my point of view in this of right, what does Choose to Succeed do? It's helping these schools grow, right? And it's not just financial, but it's also this kind of advisory aspect that you do, right? Like connecting them with elected officials, bringing people in to tour their schools, so that community leaders know what's going on in education.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, Inga. In a lot of ways, we're trying to create kind of the Silicon Valley for public education. Well, what makes Silicon Valley in the Palo Alto, Stanford area, San Francisco so unique? I mean, there's a reason that all those tech firms and those tech entrepreneurs are there, because there is this ecosystem where it is supportive, it is encouraging. If you have a question, the person down the street can probably answer it. If you need money, not only can the person fund it, but they've probably helped start 2 or 3 or been CEO of a couple of companies. They can help you work through the challenges that every entrepreneur is going to have. We're trying to do that same thing in San Antonio, not just about bringing money together, but the talent, the expertise, the ecosystem, the environment, where mere mortals should be able to take their idea and scale it up to be able to serve kids in a really positive way.
Yeah, yeah. I remember at the event you talked about, we need teamwork among the schools, right? Because to some extent, right, you don't want it to feel like it's a zero-sum game as far as like, oh, there's this finite pool of really good teachers and we're all fighting for those teachers. Like that's not really how it is, right? Because like each school model is so different that they really need a different kind of teacher for each school, right? And there's things that y'all can do to support, the pool of good quality teachers.
Look, it's true. I mean, it's got to be cooperative, and it's okay that it's a little bit competitive. I mean, it is very cutthroat for talent in Silicon Valley. And it's getting kind of cutthroat for talent in San Antonio to find the best school leaders. If you've got a network of schools that you're growing, to find the best teachers, and there is an extent to which that is very healthy, because if you are a school leader, if you are a network CEO, you have even more incentive to create a workplace and an environment that your teachers love. And as soon as you feel like, hey, it doesn't matter if I'm that great of a place to work, people don't really have that many options, and the options they do have aren't that great, then you can slack off a little bit as an employer. And it is very, very challenging to get the most talented people to choose our sector of education. So when we do find them, we've got to keep them. Hey, gosh, we lost some great people when I was CEO at my previous organization, and it always stung when they left, especially when I didn't want them to leave, and it was my fault for making them angry or doing something in the organization that ticked them off that causes them to leave. But I always felt a little bit better if they ended up at a charter school that I really thought of, highly of, because I thought, I wish we had them here, but they're going to be doing great things for young people and families no matter where they are. And I think we have that same ethos, that same kind of just vibe in the air, here in San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah. And we try to cultivate in the Charter Moms group this idea that I know families who have one kid at SASD, one kid at Basis, one kid at a private school. You just do what works, right? It's about problem solving. And
our family. And that's our family. I mean, we've got one at private, and we've got 2 at charter. So it's not, like you said, it's not just what's the best school or what's the right school, the perfect school. No, what's the perfect school for my child? What's the perfect school for my child, given where he is, where she is right now? And that can change and that can evolve over time. I mean, you mentioned you don't have the typical child. Hey, there's no typical child. You take all the stats and you throw them together. The average IQ, the average height, the average weight, the average color of eyes, the average size hands, the average size head. You put all that together and you have the average. You will not find one child who actually has any of those numbers in the average. I mean, the average is just taking all this messy number thing and finding a way to just pinpoint it somewhere. And it just, so the reason that you can't create a school for a typical child is, there are no typical children. Life would be a lot easier if there were, and it would also be a lot less gratifying and satisfying. We would have a lot less creativity and entrepreneurship than we have in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. And people have asked me, like, well, why is there Charter Moms in the name? Why does it say charter? And why moms? I'm like, okay, dads are welcome, granddads, guardians, all welcome. But there's something that like the name stuck because there were, right. It's like, Victoria and I have been friends for a long time. Her dad and my dad used to practice law together. And we were on a play date, and she was explaining to me about what the Brackish Foundation was doing. And I was like, okay, we need the moms to talk about these new schools that are coming, about Gray Hearts and Basis and Idea, and the name stuck. But there's a spark. There's an essential truth in this though, which is, and I've got links in the blog post, but like the Mathematica, like the randomized controlled trials, and like the Credo studies, and like that show that students at the high performing charter schools are getting more learning in a school year than students at some of the district schools. And Nicole sent me some graphs, and they're in the blog post, and it compares the schools in the Choose Succeed portfolio versus the other charters and ISDs in Bear County. And there's a cluster at the top of the Choose to Succeed schools.
Well, and I think actually, I could be mistaken on this, and your audience of commentators will let me know if I am. But I think the highest performing charter school is not a school that is in the CTS portfolio. It's ECLA. It's the Hebrew language school. I don't want to get Eleanor's name wrong, but is it Eleanor?
Eleanor Kolet's Hebrew Language Academy.
There you go. Thank you. I mean, they're beating everybody hands down, and they're not a Choose to Succeed school, but they're a charter school, and it's a school with a very specific, I mean, a real niche. And the great thing is when you're a charter, you can be a niche player. It's okay that only 300 families in all of Bear County like you, or 500 families in all of Bear County want what you're offering. You know, when you're the 120,000 student district, you can't afford to be niche-y. You just can't.
Yeah, but I think it's amazing that there's a charter school in San Antonio where all the 8th graders go visit Israel. I mean, how cool is that, right? That's
pretty amazing.
Right. And like yeah, you mentioned SA Prep. I mean, they have a really unique school culture too, right? And gathering place. Like they're doing things that are really special that you couldn't do at just a big mainstream school. That the families are there because they buy in, and that's the experience that they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to get you in trouble. I don't want you to name names, but what are some of the obstacles or some of your concerns or potential like roadblocks to succeed being able to and partly why I'm asking this is I want families to be thinking about what they can do to help, because I feel like we have kind of a dual role. It's like partly we help you find the schools, but it's like once you find great schools for your kids, we want you to stand up and protect them against competition or threats.
Well, Inga, you don't want to get me in trouble, which means and if there's no controversy, there's no conflict. And that's for really boring TV, and nobody wants to watch boring TV. So
okay,
I'm happy to get myself in trouble, and I'm happy to name names. But I just the education establishment right now benefits from having a monopoly hold on education in all of the communities where they operate. And look, I don't begrudge them. I don't blame them. I mean, there is nobody in the history of the United States who has had a monopoly on a sector or an industry who willingly gave up their monopoly and said, hey, we welcome competition. We want less market share. We want to have to work harder. We want to be less profitable. I mean, why would you surrender your monopoly if you had it? So I don't begrudge the monopolists. I will tell you that the U.S. is one of the few serious industrialized nations in the U.S. Where the only schools that get public funding are district schools. That's just not the case in most of the rest of the world. You go to Canada, you go to Great Britain, two of our English-speaking, contemporaries who have very similar values and standard of living and diversity and an embracement of diversity, equity, and inclusion that we have in the U.S. And government money, public money, goes to fund Catholic schools and parochial schools and little private Montessori schools, as well as what we would consider, to be school districts. And that is part of the reason that those countries routinely have students who are performing better than American students on the PISA, the PISA. I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's the exam that the world's 14-year-olds take across the planet every other year. And that's how we get those national rankings where we hear who has the smartest kids in the planet and whose kids are lagging. And there's remarkable consistency, in those rankings every year. And, that's part of my vision for San Antonio, is that the more varieties and types of schools we have, the better. Okay, so who's against charters? The establishment is against charters. Teachers unions, there are two national teacher unions, the AFT and the NEA, and they both have their affiliate here in Texas, and those Texas affiliates all have their local, shops. They are violently against charter schools. They have put a cap on charter schools in Chicago. They copied that playbook in Los Angeles. They are giving hell, if I can say that on your blog post, to a woman who I think is the greatest charter CEO in America right now. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have a lot of friends who are charter CEOs, but she's among the best. Eva Moskowitz, who runs Success Academy. They were the only organization that every year I said, okay, they actually are outperforming Idea Public School. And we visited them, we learned from them, and we try to learn as many lessons as we could. And in our space, when you catch arrows and when you are criticized, it's not when you're doing a bad job. Nobody cares when you're doing a bad job. You're not a threat. It's when you're doing an excellent job, when you're doing a great job. And the unions have made life very difficult for her, all the way up to the point where they ran an anti-charter mayor in Mayor de Blasio. And he made it his mission from before he was even inaugurated to, quote unquote, stop tolerating Eva Moskowitz and her schools, end of quote. So, we're seeing the same thing here in San Antonio. I'll give you one little anecdote, and just cut me off whenever I'm getting boring. When we go to build charter schools, like everybody, we don't have $20 million laying around to build a school, so you have to borrow money. And one way that schools borrow money is called issuing bonds. It's funny, you talk about selling bonds and really you're borrowing money, but it's the same thing. But instead of having a bank fund you, you have all these people who buy your bonds who fund you. In a kind of a technical, boring description of that. But in Texas, to sell your bonds and to make your bonds tax exempt, which means that as the person running the school, you get to pay the lowest interest rate possible, which means less money goes to Wall Street and more money gets to stay in the classroom at your school. All you have to do is have a municipality or a county or the state verify that you are actually a public school. That's all they have to do. And for years and years and years and years, we would send a little note to the city, and the city manager would certify, oh yeah, they're a public school. And that would give us access to low interest rate loans. Well, 2 years ago, when the charter organization that I was leading asked the city of San Antonio for it, it didn't just get approved like it normally was. It had to go through a public debate. And the teachers unions and the two largest districts in San Antonio, they said, you should not approve this because we need a centralized plan for adding charter schools in the city, because it's creating chaos and confusion and disruption. And this was, okay, maybe that's a conversation to have, but not when the job of the city is just to sign off and say, yeah, they're a public school and they should get the same tax exempt treatment that other public schools get. It turns out that we had already had the county approve it, and we already had the attorney general writing a letter to approve it, either of which would have been fine. But we just wanted to expose the great lengths that the establishment will go to kill innovation. I mean, I thought it was pretty despicable. And what was equally unsettling to me is nobody who opposed us had to pay any sort of price for it. Why is that? Because we don't have enough charter moms. We don't have enough voters who send a message to elected officials that charter schools are public schools and they should appreciate and enjoy the support of all the elected officials. And if people don't support them, there will be a price to pay at the ballot box. And until we can harness that political heft and that political influence, we're going to continue to be a very easy target. So our risks really are political. Our biggest funder is the state of Texas, and that is a political process for who gets money in any sort of state government. And any sort of political process, there are winners and there are losers, and we have to work very hard to make sure that the students in charter schools don't end up becoming the losers.
Right. That's like, I need to revisit this with our group and our audience, but I want everybody in the group to know who their city council member is, so that if they do some funny business, with these bonds or these permits, then, they'll get an earful of it. And I want them all to know who is their state representative and their state senator, because those are the people who determine the budgets
Yeah.
How much goes to charter schools, how much goes to public schools in general, how much goes to traditional public schools, how much goes to facilities funding, which charter schools get just a sliver of what the traditional public schools get, and charter schools have no taxing authority. Nobody's getting a property tax bill that says Great Hearts or Idea Public Schools on it. It all has to come through the state. And it's an education process. And so parents, if you're watching this video, thank you. Tell your friends, right, that charter moms, we need to mobilize. We need to protect our schools.
Well, Inga, I've got a quiz for you.
Okay, what's this?
It's a one-question quiz. I'm writing this op-ed for the San Antonio Express News, and this is kind of my opening hook in the first paragraph. But do you know which president in his major education speech called on every state that had a cap on charter schools to lift that cap? Which president made that declaration or made that request?
Was it Barack Obama?
It was President Barack Obama. So George W. Bush created charter schools in Texas. Barack Obama had policies that saw their increase. Secretary DeVos and President Trump have been very supportive of charters. So for years and years, we were not a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. We were an American issue that was bipartisan. And we've got to find our way back because the future of our kids should not be a litmus test for one party or the other. And that's what it's becoming. And, we've got to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And we've got to build bridges, we need Republican parents, independent parents, Democrat parents, all speaking up and saying that it needs to be about the kids, right? And that, people need to set partisanship aside and special interests aside and focus on, what's going to help kids get the best education. And, if you look at the Choose to Succeed portfolio schools, those schools really are delivering excellent education for their students. And that's what we need more of.
Yeah, well, I think that CTS, hopefully it's become the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. If Good Housekeeping still exists as a publication, if they still do their seal of approval, it's just a great third-party acknowledgement of the quality of the school and the education program that it's delivering.
Yeah. No, we always, in all of our enrollment guides, we always mention whether a school is a Choose to Succeed partner school, because I think it does show validation, that because y'all are choosy. you want to support the best schools, and you have found schools that maybe just weren't as well known, right? Like School of Science and Technology, they've been around for a while and they were doing great work, but they maybe weren't getting the recognition and they weren't able to grow as quickly as they could. And now they have new campuses opening and they're just doing great work.
Oh, it's a fabulous school. I just toured them 2 weeks ago. I was given a tour by them 2 weeks ago, and I was very impressed by their project-based learning and their commitment, even during COVID times, to offer in-person robust learning for all parents and kids who wanted that for their children. So I think it's an exceptional school. And like you said, it's a non-traditional school that was really getting overlooked in the philanthropic community. But we have a really rigorous process. We look at data, we look at information, we look at how well kids actually do. And that way, we're not just picking the school leaders who have the slickest sales pitch or the prettiest slide deck or, the kind of the trendiest marketing slogans. Are kids learning, and how do we know it? So, and that's why I'm very appreciative of what you're doing with SA Charter Moms, because you help give a platform for other people to be able to gain access to that information.
Yeah, we want family. And partly it's I believe in liberty and I believe in markets, and families are exercising that. And y'all look at how long the waiting lists are, and that's a sign that a school needs to grow. I know IDEA has had tremendous waiting lists, and that's part of what fuels additional campuses opening. And I also want, as we were talking about advocacy and obstacles, that if a family is waitlisted and they feel frustrated about that, where they need to direct their anger at the elected officials who've been creating roadblocks for schools who right, there used to be a charter cap in Texas. Right now there's a lot of room under the cap, but the State Board of Education approves new charter schools, and they need to hear from parents about what the community needs, what types of schools the community needs, because they have the power to veto schools that the commissioner recommends, right? Commissioner vets
Yes.
the charter applicants, really rigorous process. But sometimes even good schools get knocked down at
Yes.
the SBOE level because of politics.
They do, and Texas is one of the few serious states that's doing important things, that only has one way to authorize charters. Many states have multiple authorizers. You can go through your state, you can go through a university, you can go through a nonprofit, and there's a rigorous set of standards. And it's not just like once they authorize you, that's it. No, they're in charge of authorizing you, but then they're also responsible for making a decision of whether or not you're good enough to stay open. And again, I think that's the sort of healthy accountability that charter schools have that we ought to see more of.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, you have answered all of my questions. Thank you for being such a good sport. But I want to open up to you. Do you have like a call to action? Do you have like closing thoughts, or something you want to do you want to stump me? Like, what do you want to ask parents to be thinking about or take away from this?
Yes, it's well. First of all, everybody continue to watch all of Inga's you know uh, video chats and read her blog posts and do all of that, Inga, because I really think that you are doing an exceptional job of shedding a lot of light on what the charter school landscape looks like in San Antonio, and you do a great job of bringing parents together and bringing people together to share information and share knowledge, and knowledge really is power. But specifically, we're a little bit late in the campaign season right now. But if every parent just made it a point during primary season and during the general election to, in a public forum, ask candidates to state their record and their views on charter schools, it's important to get them on the record. And if there's a Democrat who is against charters, do not show up with a bunch of conservative Republicans to protest. No, you find their constituents who are Democrats, who they know, who they might go to church with, who they see in restaurants. You get those parents of charter kids to go and make the case and hold them accountable. And likewise, if you're an urban Democrat and you support charter schools, and there's a rural Republican who doesn't because the district has them in their pocket, your people are not the ones, to go talk to that person. People respond better to their constituents who are putting them in office. So get them on the record, engage them politely, professionally, but get them on the record. And if you don't like the answer, do something about it.
Yeah, it's like Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. It's
Yeah.
neighborhood by neighborhood. Yeah. And that's how we're going to organize. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful, Tom. Great advice, great information. And I encourage everybody like click through in the blog post. And then I'm going to include a link to get Tom's newsletters, which are like, just I get fired up every time I read them. But he sends out these updates about what Choose to Succeed is up to.
Well, really, all my blog post does, it's not as good as yours, but I take the top 2 or 3 education articles from around Texas or around the country, and I just link to them and provide a little summary and analysis, just so we know what's going on,
Yeah.
Like I said, knowledge is power, and that's why I'm really thankful, Inga, for you and your listeners.
Yeah. Well, we're building a community, and it's going to, I believe in your vision that San Antonio will be this hub of education innovation that will be known for having a really skilled workforce and to be a great place to start a school.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Tom. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Me too. Take care. Have a good one.